Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We'll be beginning shortly. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm getting a little bit of background noise as everybody's coming in. We haven't muted everybody by default, just to allow everybody to hop in and ask some questions a bit later on in the call. But yeah, if I could just ask that everybody please remain muted for the time being. So standard practice, we're just going to wait a few moments, wait for everybody to filter in, because yeah, it's never the case that everybody arrives exactly on the hour. So yeah, just thank you for joining us today. We had a lot of people register and sign up for this event. I think nearly 100. So yeah, that's great to show that you're all so interested in participating and engaging with the Lagoon Challenge. And yeah, today we're going to find out a bit more about how that Lagoon Challenge will be structured, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for you folks in the audience to feed into the development of that policy as well. So yeah, I'll just wait a couple more minutes as people come in. Good to see a lot of familiar faces on the call, as well as some people that we're less familiar with. Okay, that seems to have been the main flow of people coming in. So yeah, I think we'll be underway. So yeah, thank you for everybody for joining today. My name's Jay Shepherd. I'm project manager at Marine Energy Wales. Also joined by SJ Lewis from Local Partnerships, who help me deliver this webinar. Do you just want to say hi, SJ?
Hello, everyone.
So yeah, today's agenda, I'll do a little bit of an introduction shortly. We're gonna have an overview of the proposed approach to the Lagoon Challenge that will be delivered by SJ. We'll present some of the research priorities, and there'll be an opportunity for feedback for you to suggest some of your own priority areas that you think should be included within the Lagoon Challenge. And then we'll go a bit more into the mechanics of how the grant application process will work. And then we'll have an opportunity for Q&A at the end as well. So yeah, just by a few extra details on how we're going to gather information from you guys during this session. We won't be using the chat or Q&A feature within Teams itself. We will be using Slido. We will be polling through Slido as well throughout the meeting. So if in another tab, if you want to be nice and prepared, if you could open up slido.com, we'll be using the code #TidalRange for this session. And we'll be following it along in this presentation as well. So you'll be able to see all the questions and answers come up in the shared screen that we've got going here. But yeah, I recommend getting that open and ready in a browser tab, as we'll be coming to that a little bit later on in the presentation. So yeah, as I said, my name is Jay Shepherd. I'm project manager for Marine Energy Wales. We are the industry-led stakeholder group for the offshore renewable energy sector in Wales. We operate as a single point of contact for the industry, cultivate political support and engage decision makers, facilitate networking, and we work to inform, educate and raise profiles across the industry. So we have been collaborating with local partnerships who are working on behalf of Welsh Government to facilitate a bit of engagement on this particular policy piece. So we have sent out invitations to this meeting far and wide, to people in the industry, to academia as well, so we can really get a broad range of perspectives into this. You know, we've been waiting for the Tidal Lagoon Challenge to be developed for quite a little bit of time. And yeah, now it's really important to get that engagement with industry. As I said, your chance to have your say, so that it's really reflective and can be developed for the needs of the sector as a whole, and hopefully lead to a few years, decades down the line, some real tidal lagoons in Wales. So yeah, we're a membership organisation. We work with 94 organisations across the marine energy industry in Wales. Just some logos up there of some of the people that we work with. Hopefully many of you are in the room today. Just for a bit of context, if some of you aren't so familiar with Marine Energy Wales, if you haven't engaged with us to date, yeah, we work with anybody and everybody that's involved in the sector to help progress a future where Wales is powered by offshore renewable energy. So we work with a few key technology areas, tidal range being the focus of this session. But yeah, we're quite heavily involved in trying to progress tidal stream, wave and floating offshore wind in Wales as well. So I had somebody just ask for the Slido code. That is #TidalRange. That will be coming up. It will be shared on the screen again as we get to the point at which we are using Slido. So yeah, on that note, I will shut up and be nice and quiet for the rest of the webinar, and I'll hand you over to SJ, who's going to take you through the rest of the session. Cheers.
And I know that you are mainly all interested in the Welsh Government's Tidal Lagoon Challenge, but I'm sure some of you will have spotted that I'm actually from an organisation called Local Partnerships. So I just wanted to quickly cover off who we are and reassure you that it's all legit. So Local Partnerships is an organisation that's jointly owned by Welsh Government, the LGA and Treasury. And we work across the public sector, and specifically we've been supporting Jasper Roberts, who is here with us today with the Marine Energy Programme, and I've been leading on the Tidal Lagoon Challenge, which we're here to talk to you about today. If I could have the next slide, please, Jay.
Oh, there's some sun lotion up.
So in terms of what it is that we are trying to achieve with the Tidal Lagoon Challenge, it's all about supporting the Welsh Government's programme for government commitment to make Wales a centre of emerging tidal technologies. And in the programme for government, there was also a commitment to hold a Tidal Lagoon Challenge. What we really want to be doing is bringing research excellence along to consider some of the barriers that have so far unfortunately prevented Tidal Lagoon development, and also to really quantify and unpack some of the benefits that we know exist around tidal range development. So it's really clear the business case for tidal range in Wales. We hope that through the challenge, we'll be able to support the building of a knowledge base in Wales that will smooth the path to future delivery. And we want to raise the profile of the tidal range sector in Wales through this work. And I think hopefully that provides some helpful context when we get into some of the detail that we're going to be testing with you in our session today. If I could have the next slide. So what I wanted to do to kick us off was to give you a bit of a general overview of the proposed approach. I must probably start with some caveats. So none of this has been approved, and part of what we're trying to do now is consult with stakeholders, is to understand, like, does this seem sensible to you? Are there any suggestions you would make? So if there's anything in this where you think, well, that's a bit weird, don't just think that, please tell me. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, and as Jay said, the Slido is open, so please put your thoughts in through that. This is the purpose of the session today, is very much to hear from you, the experts, about how we take this forward. If I could have the next slide. Here we are. So as you will have hopefully seen from the First Minister's announcement, we seem to be missing some zeros, but we've got a total award fund of 750,000, and that will be broken down into 3 award categories with up to £250,000 available per project. Projects will be funded for up to 2 years, and we need them to start by the 1st of April 2024. And we will also be looking at some flexibility around that timeline to allow the funding of PhDs through this work, and that's something that we're still exploring. And if anyone has any thoughts or feedback on that particular issue, would be really open to hearing that. In terms of the type of applicants that will be eligible for the scheme, we're looking at universities and research and technology organisations, but we would really welcome partnerships that brought in other types of applicants. So while we very much want the lead organisation to be from that university RTO background, we would love to see partnership with industry. We're going to be having a 2-stage application process, and I'll talk to that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And in terms of the funding itself, we're looking at funding 100% of costs, although we will again would really welcome applications that have match funding in, but that won't be a requirement and that won't be scored. If I could have the next slide. Oh, I think I should have another slide, Jay, with a little flowchart on. It's all right. That comes much later in the presentation. I've just confused myself. So glad this is being recorded for posterity. So in terms of the what we want to talk to you about today, the first thing I'm really keen to understand is in terms of the evaluation approach that we're going to take, we are going to be asking applicants to submit projects that fit our research priorities as well as our aims, that is demonstrating benefit or addressing barriers. So the research priorities are going to be really key to the sort of projects that get funded through the Tidal Lagoon challenge across each of the categories, and that should be 3 categories there. So for each of those categories, we've got a draft set of research priorities, and we've been discussing those with people in industry, people in the sector, to try and get something sensible together. But what we really wanted to do was test these with a wider audience and to test these research priorities with you today. And we'll be using Slido to do that. If I could have the next slide, please, Jay. And I think probably because Jay has already explained, you should all be linked into slido.com already. We've got that in the chat as well, but if you could make sure you do that, because that's how we're going to collect all of this up and make sure we hear all of the really great things that you have to say. So if I could have my next slide. The first set of research priorities will link to the environment category. And that, as I said, they're going to be 3 categories. The first is environment, the second is technical and engineering, and the third is socioeconomic and financial. But for the moment, focusing on environment, you can see there the set of research priorities that we're already considering. So the first around baseline data and site characterization, the second around environmental compensation and mitigation, the third around key environmental receptors, the fourth around regional scale impacts, the fifth about any potential biodiversity benefits of a tidal range project, particularly considering things like it being used as an artificial reef. Next, looking at potential environmental gains outside of that, considering flooding, considering European WFD compliance assessments, looking at the interaction between projects and cumulative or in combination effects, and finally options for managing potential adverse environmental effects. And what I wanted to do now was to give you, I think we'll give you probably about 5 minutes, but we'll see how Slido goes, to pop in anything that you think we've missed, or if you've got any comments on what is there. So that will all then pop up here. So what we'll do for the first couple of minutes is we'll leave the slide with the list up so you can see what we're thinking. But we'd be really interested then to hear from all of you. You know, what have we missed here? How do these need to be tweaked to make sure that the research around the sort of environmental space Tidal Lagoon Challenge is looking at the right issues and the issues that you're experiencing as you're trying to get projects delivered or as you're having conversations with sort of policymakers and stakeholders. So I will be quiet and give you some time to think.
Shit.
See, there's lots of people that are typing away, so that's good. And we'll just wait a few moments for some responses to come in. Yeah, I'll just keep this slide up for now, just so that you've all got a reference point of what's in there already. And as soon as we start getting some responses in, we will start looking at some of the responses on the next slide. Yeah, just if you've got questions, guys, please use that in the audience Q&A, and we'll come towards those at the end. So we're just trying to gather some additional thoughts for environmental research priority areas at the moment. So yeah, any questions, keep them in the Q&A, and we'll have a dedicated session at the end answering any sort of questions or uncertainties that you have. Yeah, good to see lots coming in. Again, guys, if you've got questions, please make sure they go into the Q&A feature, and that way we will come to those at the end. Any questions that are submitted as your sort of research priority ideas, we may struggle to identify at the end. So this is gathering some information that SJ and her colleagues can take away after the webinar. Yeah, we can see a good selection of suggestions there. We can see there's still quite a few responses coming in. Yeah, thank you to some of those who are leaving your names as well. So again, if you leave your name, or if you do not submit anonymously, that just allows for an opportunity for a bit of follow-up from the local partnerships team should they have any questions about your suggestions later on. But we do appreciate any and all feedback, anonymously or not. Just if you do put your name, we can follow up with any further questions about what you've suggested. Yeah, and just to specify, there will be two other themes that we're exploring as well. So one will be the financial socioeconomic, one will be the technical, more engineering based. So just at this point in time, we're trying to get environmentally focused proposals, research priorities. There's a good quantity of suggestions already. I think we'll keep this open for a couple more minutes before moving on to the next one. So I can see there's less people typing now.
Jay, am I right that this will you close the poll when we move on, or can we leave it open for a little bit?
We can leave it open for a little bit. We can only have one poll open at a time,
Okay.
so I'll have
In
to
which
close it
case,
to open up
yeah.
the next one.
But I would say that if you don't get a chance to say something today, whether through the polls or otherwise, I think a lot of you have my contact details, and certainly I can pop those in the chat, and I'm absolutely happy to hear further suggestions as we move forward with this. So if you don't get a chance to pop something in today, this won't be your only opportunity.
Okay, we've been collecting some responses for about 5 minutes now. So if you've got any last thoughts, quickly get them in. Just give people an opportunity to finish typing, and we will shortly move on to the next section. The number of people typing is going up.
Actually, there's just a lot of really great ideas about, there's a lot to explore in this space. So I think thank you everyone for contributing to this.
Okay, I think we will move on.
Fantastic. So as with the environmental category, we will have a number of research for priorities relating to engineering and technical issues. So the 7 that we've identified so far relate firstly to the sort of developing cost-effective turbine technologies, looking at marine wall and caisson design, looking at how marine walls might be adaptable to future anticipated sea level rise or other extreme climate events, considering different approaches to construction depending on seabed geology, and the consideration of decarbonising materials and the supply chain, thinking about decommissioning strategies. I know there is discussion around the appropriateness of decommissioning, but I think that needs to be considered within the current legal framework, and any applications of artificial intelligence for improved O&M. So that's what we're starting out with. As with before, we'll leave this up for a few moments while the poll is open so you can see the starting point, but then would really welcome your reflections via Slido on what else we might want to consider including.
That's great. I can see people are typing away already. So again, yeah, we'll just leave this up for a few moments just as a good starting point for everybody, and we'll switch over to see some of the responses as they start coming in. So there's a few people, maybe a couple of people having difficulty accessing Slido. So just make sure you open up a browser, slido.com, and then you'll be prompted to enter a code, which is just hashtag tidal range, and then that should bring you in. And then we'll move through the polls as we go through the session. No need to navigate from one question to another. Yeah, so some questions coming in now. Most of them anonymous. You are welcome to be anonymous, but again, you're more than welcome to put in your name and details as well. As I mentioned before, this just provides an opportunity to follow up with individuals about specific areas if we've got any further questions outside of this meeting. Or if you want to say something controversial, then sometimes being anonymous is the best way to do it. Again, great to see lots of input coming in.
And yeah, seeing some really interesting suggestions around materials, around turbines. So great feedback. Thank you, everyone.
The responses keep coming in. We'll keep this open for another 2 minutes or so. We're moving on to the next thematic area. there's a question directed at Mew there, if asking if we have any preference on the size of turbines. So we've seen data that says the smaller ones are perhaps a bit more environmentally friendly, but yeah, I think it needs to be explored as to what's the most optimal. But yeah, again, if you've got questions, guys, just because I saw that one there, I was happy to comment. But if you've got questions, put them in the Q&A, and we'll have a dedicated period at the end where we can have some discussion, and you can come on the mic and have a bit of a chat with us with any questions that you've got then. So yeah, we're coming up to 5 minutes on this one now. So if I could just ask that you finish typing, I'll give you a few more moments to make sure that you can wrap up any questions. So just a last opportunity to get anything in if you want. But yeah, great input so far. Great to have yeah, so much input and such a breadth of different inputs as well. And I think I'm going to call it there and shift on to the next one.
Lovely. So the final category, which we'll be looking to make awards in, is socioeconomic and financial. And some of the areas that we've identified as research priorities include government support packages and what they might need to include, how they could be structured, and the different financial models for delivering a viable tidal lagoon project, and support mechanisms to reduce the overall project costs. So those are all quite closely linked together. We're also interested in supply chain and job opportunities associated with tidal lagoon and development, and any impact on local industries, and any strategies to multiply the positive effects and mitigate the negative impacts. Consideration of any legislative barriers and potential solutions to that. As across the energy space, Welsh Government is really interested in models of community ownership and local benefit. So how that could be pulled into tidal range development would be really interesting to us, as would any social research on attitudes and needs in relation to tidal lagoons in Wales. As well as consideration of the value of the pattern of tidal range energy generation, so the energy system benefits of tidal range to the UK energy system, and particularly added value of storage strategies to either the individual project, financial model, or the energy system as a whole. So as before, you're all getting very used to this now. I'm sure we'll leave this up for a few moments so you can see where our thinking is at, and then welcome your feedback on sort of additional areas that we might want to consider under this heading.
Yeah, so the poll is open should you wish to start typing away. Yeah, I can see some people are doing that already. And yeah, I'll just wait a minute or so, or just wait till the responses start coming in, and we'll have a look at them. Yeah, so we've got a few coming in now. Go to 1 more minute and we will move along. So again, yeah, thank you for all your input. It's been great to see lots of suggestions coming in for all three of these themes. But yeah, if you've got a couple of extra ideas on the tip of your tongue, just make sure that you get them in the next minute, and then we'll move along because we have some other questions to ask you as well. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We'll move on to the next section.
And for the next piece of the research priorities we initially suggested, we want to understand which of those you feel are most important. So I think, Jay, I'm right in saying that it is selecting the top 5. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're asking people to rank their top 5 rather than rank all of them. You can just kind of pick out from the lists that SJ previously shared. We'll go through the environmental, then the engineering and technical, and then the financial and socioeconomic. Yeah, if you just have a go at ranking them, and then this should give us a good weighting of which ones are deemed the most important.
And don't worry at all that the ones that you've suggested haven't been picked up. We'll be considering all of those as well as part of this.
Oh, we're getting some responses through now in real time. Start to see which people think are the most important.
Always very exciting when you can see it changing live.
So I don't think we'll spend as long with this open as we have done for taking your feedback. So just we'll keep this open for a few more moments for you to provide your rankings, but it doesn't look like too many of the options are swapping around anymore. It looks like we've kind of hit a general kind of pattern.
And interesting to
we've
see
got
the key receptors at the top there, Jay. Particularly, I imagine fish, but the fish bears physical processes.
Yeah. Just got a couple of extra people who are still doing the ranking. Oh, the numbers going up again. Yeah, I don't think that's chopping around too much. So I'm going to thank you all for your input there, and we will move on to the next one.
Which is if you could rank again, as you've just done, but this time we are looking at the engineering and technical category. And again, just to give us a sense of which areas of these you think are the most important for research focus.
Okay, real-time responses are starting to come in. Interesting to see AI in the top 5. Cost-effective turbine technologies is the clear leader. So again, we'll just wait a couple more moments just to allow a couple of other people to feed in, and we'll move on to ranking the third and final theme. So yeah, this ranking will just really help us have an indication of where the industry sees being the greatest need for research, which can hopefully then feed into the selection process for the Lagoon Challenge.
Exactly.
Okay, there's nobody left voting, so we'll move on to the next one. As we can see, we're kind of settling in on common ground there now. Things don't seem to be popping up and down so much anymore. So financial models for delivering a viable lagoon project is the clear top.
Yeah.
Again, we'll just wait a couple more moments just to allow a few other people to give their input, and we'll move on from this section. Okay, I don't think anybody's ranking anymore. So yeah, thank you for your input there, and moving on.
And I think we just have
Yep.
one
Oh,
final
sorry. Yeah.
one final question, thinking about the award categories, and you've thought now about sort of the research priorities within each of those. And I guess in terms of if you are an organisation considering applying into the Tidal Lagoon Challenge, it's just helpful for us to understand sort of which categories you think would be most useful or you'd be most likely to apply into. And that's just to give us a little bit of a sense about where our applications might fall as we think about the grant portfolio. So you're obviously not going to be bound to this at all, but just some helpful data from us as we design this.
Okay. I think, yeah, we've had quite a few people respond now. That seems to have more or less stabilized.
I think,
It's tweaking a little bit.
and Jay, I'm happy if it's possible to leave that poll open while I talk to the grant application process for a little bit, if that's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, I think we've had half of the people in here have responded thus far, but yeah, I can move on and then ensure that that's still open.
So we've talked about those award categories, so what it is that the Welsh Government is trying to achieve, the sort of research areas we're interested in with the Tidal Lagoon Challenge. I wanted to test a little bit more how it will work in practice, so share with you our thinking. I'm sure you're interested in that detail, in that nitty-gritty. And then also we've got, again, a number of questions about specific elements of that process that we'd like you to consider. So if I could have the next slide. So in terms of the process itself, and sorry, there's quite a lot of very small words on this, but I will talk through this. As I said, we're looking at a two-stage process. So the first stage will be a short qualification stage where we'll be testing the alignment of proposed research projects to the aims of the Welsh Government with the Tidal Lagoon Challenge, that is quantifying the benefit and addressing barriers to tidal range development in Wales, and also those research priorities which you've seen the initial drafts of today and have fed back on. So the top scoring proposals, and they'll be scored for that fit, for that alignment, will be selected and moved to stage 2. And that's to make sure that we are managing the time input of people into this process. So we'll quickly move from how well aligned are they, the top scorers, go through to stage 2. And in stage 2, there'll be a further request for information and then further assessment of that research proposal. So looking in more detail at the research quality and at the benefit to Wales of the proposed project. So each proposal will be assessed, as I've said, and then we will award at least one project in each category. But depending on the amount of funds requested, we intend to award multiple projects across each category, so working down the scoring on that. And ultimately, what we're seeking at the end of the process is for research to be published to benefit the tidal lagoon sector across the categories we've talked about today. And we'll have a Q&A at the end, so as Jay has been saying, please pop your questions on any of this or your suggestions into Slido for me. But if we can have the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about some of the specifics of that. So in terms of stage 1, as an applicant, what you would need to have, what you would need to do is assemble a team and provide a summary and your objectives. And then we're asking for 1,500 words at that stage on the alignment to the Welsh Government aims in our research priorities. We would need to understand the amount of grant you were requesting, and if there was an intention to use any match funding, a little bit of information about that match funding would also be required at stage 1. Then, if I have my next slide, at stage 2, we're getting into a lot more detail. So we would want a 3,000 word research proposal. We'd want 1,000 words on the benefit to Wales. We'd need the project timetable and the team and experience and detailed costs. And then if I could have the next slide. In terms of the funding that is available through the project, as I've said, we're looking at up to £250,000 per project from the Tidal Lagoon Challenge grant, funding up to 100% of full economic cost, and we are open to match funding from other sources. If I could have the next slide. So, given what I've said about stage 1, we're interested in how long you think you would need from us launching the challenge, so putting all of the prospectus, the application information, the application form out. How long do you think it would take your team to put a response together? So at stage 1, we're looking at that summary and objectives, like who's in your team, and that 1,500 words on the alignment to aims and research priorities, as well as the amount of grant you'd be requesting and any alternate funding sources that you had.
Yeah, we'll leave that open for a little while longer just to allow for some extra responses to come in. But it does look like we have a clear favourite of 8 weeks. There has been no responses for the higher end, 12 weeks and above.
That's good because
Yeah.
I'm keen that we move forward and make awards as quickly as we can, but also want to make sure that everyone does have enough time to put together really strong research proposals to benefit Wales. So good to see some consensus emerging here.
Yeah, so just we'll wait a couple more moments. Last chance for anybody to add their piece if they want to. It doesn't look like we're getting any additional movement there. No, okay, so I think we'll move on to the next one.
So in terms of this application process, we just want to understand if there are any times of the year when we might need to allow more time in our application process. For example, I imagine December is going to be such a month when, and August, these were my two thoughts about when it might be harder, but just if there are particular peaks or troughs in your work that you're aware of that might make participating in the process more difficult, just so that we can be mindful of that when we're setting the timescales.
Christmas and summer holidays.
Yeah, it's all right. It's what I thought, but it's always good. Sometimes people tell you some really random month, like October is very busy for them. And I just want to make sure that we've not got a surprisingly busy October's situation going on. But it looks like we've got a Christmas and school holiday situation, which is quite all right, and we can work around.
Yeah, okay, so I think there's general consensus there. So we shall move on.
Brilliant. So we've talked about the stage 1 application, which is that more high level application. In terms of stage 2, as I said, what we would want there is a 3,000 word research proposal, 1,000 words on the benefit to Wales, a fairly detailed project timetable, details about your team and the experience of your team, and we'd want detailed costings. So this would be a much more involved sort of application, but it would build on what had already been completed through stage 1. And again, we'd just like an understanding if you were brought through into the stage 2 process, how long do you think you would need to complete that phase?
So while people are voting on that, we've just had an extra message come in via the chat from Paul Aylesmore, just to say that the end of the financial year is a bit of an issue as well, and there's been a thumbs up there as well. So just
Okay, brilliant.
another one to bear in mind. End of financial year, summer holidays, Christmas.
All right. It's good when the times you thought were a problem are a problem for everyone else as well. So we're all in, well, just through end of financial year busyness together.
Okay, so yeah, I think we've got a clear favourite on this one, being 8 weeks. Some people would prefer longer, couple shorter, but yeah, 8 weeks seems to be the ballpark figure there.
Okay.
Then again, same question as previously, so feel free to fill in if
Yeah,
or maybe
and
we can.
I
Were you
think we
happy
can
to skip
probably
this one?
skip this, I
Yeah.
think, given
Yeah.
given what we got last time, so that's all right. So we're interested, as I've said, we won't assess match funding. It's just entirely optional, but we'd be interested to know if people would be likely to seek match funding to support their projects, just to give us a bit of an indication in terms of how we're thinking about this. So again, I know many of you are submitting anonymously anyway, but not something you'll be held to, just sort of helpful for us to understand as we design the process.
So looking fairly even between yes and don't know, with a small minority of no's.
Yeah, which is quite all right. And I think interesting, certainly very interesting and helpful for us. And so if we move on to the next question, and again, this might well be something where you, given that I'm only telling you the details of the scheme today, you don't necessarily have a response, but we're sort of interested in the scale of the likely research projects that will be brought forward through the Tidal Lagoon Challenge. As I've said, we've got that upper limit of 250,000 per project, but if we're making smaller awards, we might be able to make more than one award in a category. So we just sort of want to get a bit of a sense of where that spread might be in terms of the type of projects you're beginning to think about for the Tidal Lagoon Challenge.
Just a question from me while we're waiting for people to respond to that. Would the costing of the project weigh into the decision-making process at all? So would Welsh Government opt to go for 2 projects at half the price of one other project if it enables more research to come out of it?
We're still determining exactly the evaluation criteria. I think it's likely for the top scoring proposal, that one will win and be awarded, but that might mean we have a smaller pot left. So for example, if we awarded 200,000, we would then be looking to award the 50,000 to the highest scoring that was at the 50,000 or below threshold. So it won't be a key determinant, because what we're really looking for is research excellence, but it might factor in because we are keen to support as much as we can across the sector.
And
so a bit of a non-answer there, Jay.
Yeah.
Sorry. But we're not going to score cost.
Yeah, okay, so you're not going to score cost. So if there's multiple applications that are similar, but at varying costs, the cost factor will not come into it.
No.
Okay. No. So it seems that most people would be aiming for the upper limit. Just trying to see what are some of the ranges of options here. So yeah, the smaller amounts are quite low scoring, and yeah, it's looking like the majority are upwards of 100,000, should we say?
Yeah. Which is quite, we've set it at that level because we recognise that research in a lot of these areas is expensive. So that's not a surprising result, not something that as Welsh Government we would be at all concerned by. And then I think she says dangerous. I think we might be on the final poll question, Jay. Is that right?
Nope.
No. Too much to hope. So the final question then, no, not the final question, sorry, Jay. The almost final question is, are you likely to work in partnership with another organisation to submit an application to the challenge? And as I said at the start, we would expect the lead partner to be a university or research technology organisation, but we would really welcome and be interested to see consortium bids and partnership bids where one of the organisations in the partnership was from an industry background, so it could bring that real context to bear.
Yep, good to see a strong appetite for collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we can move on. That is a overwhelming yes, I think.
Lovely. So then I think some questions have been coming in as we go through, but also if you haven't had a chance to pop your question into Slido, please do that now, and I will do my very best to answer these. But any that I can't, we can take away and feedback a response through MEW, and this will also inform the FAQs, which will form part of the pack when we launch the Tidal Lagoon Challenge.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say there is an upvoting system, so feel free to use that. And the more popular questions, if there's a question that you'd like to see the answer to, they'll filter to the top. We'll work down through them in that order. If when we get to your questions, if you want to make any additions to that or come on the call to ask a question personally, feel free, and we can maybe have a bit of a dialogue going through some of these. So yeah, the first question, or top one, is from Johan Jenkins, saying that much work has already been conducted on this subject, including work commissioned by Welsh Gov. How will that work be included?
So in terms of, we know there's an existing body of work. This is very much about building on that, because despite that work, unfortunately, we're still in a position where we've not seen a tidal lagoon be brought forward. In terms of how we're evaluating proposals, we will expect them to have originality, quality and significance. So we won't, part of the evaluation criteria will be making sure that the research is novel and is adding to the scientific field. So it will be about building that knowledge, about doing more, about considering some of those areas that we saw through the research priorities, and those have been developed through discussions with organisations such as NRW to try and identify areas where there is more that can be done, new research that can bring forward and push forward the sector.
Any further comment on that, Johan? You happy with that question, your answer? So I'd like to give people the opportunity for a bit of a dialogue on this.
It was more in terms of the socio-economic and supply chain opportunities. The work the Welsh Government commissioned a number of years ago, and more generally across the environmental and the engineering work that's already been done by not only Tidal Lagoon Power and some people on this call from industry, but other developers. Particularly, I know those that are members of the Tidal Range Alliance. There's a huge amount of work already been undertaken, and I think, you know, that I use one particular in Tim Carter, who led on the environmental work with Tidal Lagoon Power, probably one of the ones that I'd encourage you to speak to, because Tim led the team that was successful in achieving the environmental aspects of the DCO. So, you know, I think my message is that let's not look to reinvent the wheel. Let's build on that work already been undertaken by industry partners, universities and developers.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And yeah, absolutely, we're keen that this work builds on what has already been done, rather than going over old ground. Happy to take the top question there from Rachel. Rachel, do you want to jump in and add anything, or should I respond?
We've got two questions from the team at TideTech, so maybe we can deal with these both at the same time. So yeah, is there an opportunity for partners from industry to join rather than it being purely academic focused? And then also a question from Rachel's colleague Anna, asking if there's a possibility to make a test site for smaller scale research.
Yeah, so in terms of the partnership, very much while we want to see the lead organisations as research organisations, we want to build their strength and capability. What I think is really important is that those links to industry are made. It's something we'll probably be discussing with you, Jay, as we move forward, of how we can support some of those links to be made. But in terms of the application, we very much would welcome partnership and bids. So bids where you've got a research organisation linking really strongly into industry in whatever way is relevant. And I think given the scale and scope, which is quite wide, of what we're prepared to fund, I'm sure there'll be lots of different ways that partners from industry could inform that research, could feed in. And to an extent, I don't want to try and bind that or set that as a particular course, because I think it will depend on the research what's most appropriate. But I think if you need help fostering those relationships, that's something the team at NEW are absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure they'd be really happy to help with some of that brokering.
Yeah, have you got anything you'd like to add to that, Rachel?
Nope, that answered my question. Thanks.
Yeah, and yeah, as SJ's mentioned, as MEW, we're quite well placed to bridge the worlds of industry and academia. And yeah, we'll look to see what we can do to help facilitate closer working together of industry and academia on this particular project. So yeah, Rachel's colleague Anna also had a question there, I guess proposing why not make a test site for smaller tidal range projects? Is that something that would be within the feasibility of the Lagoon Challenge?
I mean, I think if you could bring along enough match funding that we could support that, that's certainly something we would consider. I imagine that would be at a scale beyond what we've got currently committed in the Tidal Lagoon Challenge. But I'd be keen to emphasise that the Tidal Lagoon Challenge is only part of the Welsh Government's commitment to tidal energy and to making Wales a world centre of emerging tidal technologies. So we're certainly continuing to consider other ways to support the sector. And, you know, that's what the Marine Energy Programme under Jasper Roberts is looking to do. So certainly something that we're considering in the mix and would be happy to have further conversations about.
Any further comment on that, Arne?
No, yeah, pretty much. It's what I'm hoping for, and I think it's important that we demonstrate with hardware, and we have plans for a small scale demonstration, and I think that could really contribute to kick off Westminster to look more into this also. So that's why we are always asking about this small scale test site, like utilizing a redundant dry dock, etc. So, but thank you for a good answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arne. So the next question is asking, is there any network building event for this call? So this is perhaps somewhere where MEW can fulfill this role best. We don't have one planned, but you know, we could facilitate something much like we facilitated this session to get your feedback. So that's one we'll take away and discuss with the local partnerships team, discuss after this call if we think that would be right, if that would be useful, if that would bring value to organizations submitting bids. So yeah, leave that one with us, and yeah, we MEW communicate with local partnerships quite regularly anyway. We're supporting them on this work. So we'll be quite joined up in what they're doing anyway. So as and when we approach the time that the call is open and launched, perhaps we can look to schedule something then. Cool. And this person was anonymous, so they don't get the opportunity for further comment. So Henry Dixon's got a question here. So how will the Tidal Lagoon Challenge take into account the different benefits of large and small tidal lagoons? Will the Tidal Lagoon Challenge be looking for a range of site-specific proposals?
So we're really open. So in terms of the research project being brought forward, whether they want to look at large lagoons, look at small lagoons, compare lagoons, to a certain extent, we will be guided by the research community, by you, about what it is that you want to bring forward and what you think is worthy of being funded. In terms of the site specificity of the challenge and of the call for projects, as Welsh Government, we won't be putting forward a preferred site, but so long as the research is looking in Welsh waters, so at projects that will benefit Wales, we would be open to research that focuses on a particular site. So we, if that is what comes through the Tidal Lagoon Challenge, we would be open to funding research focused on a particular site, but we are not going to be designating a site for consideration, because I am aware that particularly some of the environmental issues do apply more in one location than another. Henry, happy if you want to jump on and ask any sort of follow-ups to that.
I think that really I'm hoping that the overall impact of the Tidal Lagoon Challenge will support all lagoons, small and large. And obviously there's a huge difference in the financial risk of, as everybody knows, the North Wales Tidal Lagoon compared to our neighbour down the road at Mostyn. and there may be very different benefits and maybe very different issues. It would be a shame, I think, for Wales if for whatever reason you had 3 proposals which just looked at small lagoons. And so I feel that that should be one of the criteria that you should be looking at. Whether it's North Wales or Cardiff or whatever, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah, okay, and that's helpful feedback and something we'll certainly take into consideration as we're looking at the sort of assessment and evaluation which we're developing at the moment.
Thank
Which
you very
I
much,
think
Henry.
is
Yeah.
also a
So
nice segue to Reza's question there, Jay, about assessment criteria. So yes, we'll publish clear assessment criteria that set out exactly what we're evaluating and how that will be scored. And certainly happy to take on board the feedback around match funding and collaboration. I think from our point of view, the key things for us are that we're funding really good projects that really address the key research criteria and which can demonstrate that benefit to Wales. And that's what we're looking at scoring around at the moment. We don't want this to be unnecessarily complicated. Obviously, we want to be awarding the best projects through this process, but we're conscious of not creating too much of a bureaucratic burden on applicants through this as well. So we are trying to keep this as simple and streamlined as possible.
do you want to come back on anything there, Reza? Are you happy with that answer?
No, that was perfect. Thank you very much.
I thought you were saying no, you're not happy with that answer.
No, always happy with SJ's answer.
Cheers, thank you very much. So we've got another anonymous question now. So how will the Welsh Challenge relate to the UK government's draft MPSs for energy infrastructures Appendix C on what a well-developed tidal scheme looks like?
So we're entirely independent of UK government and what they choose to do, but I do appreciate that for the sector, that is a key sort of yardstick we know UK government will be measuring by, so we don't want to act entirely without consideration of it. I would hope that through the Tidal Lagoon Challenge we are able to support both the development of new data for some of the modelling that DESNZ are looking to see, as well as potentially new models to support I guess the sector in addressing some of their areas of concern, probably particularly around value for money and the socio-economic benefits that they're asking to see. Obviously, a lot of the requirements that are coming through the well-developed proposal are very site-specific, so things like supply chain plans for a particular site. All of that sort of stuff is probably outside of the remit of the Tidal Lagoon Challenge, but some of the wider modelling pieces I would expect to be caught up within what we're looking to fund.
Okay. We have another anonymous question asking, can the requirements for the consenting process be determined as a priority?
And so I think Kerry's been in the
yeah, I
did
see,
and I can see
Kerry had
we've
come up
got
in the
a
question.
hand up.
Hello,
Which is from Kerry. So I might let our representative from NRW speak to that one.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, sorry, it kept coming up the list. I wasn't too sure whether to respond to typing, but it's quite limited on what you can type. So grateful for the opportunity to speak. Yeah, just in response to that, we do have guidance that's available. So the title is Information to Support Environmental Assessment of Tidal Lagoon Developments in Wales. So that sets out NRW's roles and responsibilities. It sets out implications for key receptors, advice relating to other NRW functions such as flood risk fisheries and other things. Unfortunately, it's in a bit of a long queue to get onto our website at the moment, but we can provide that as a copy. Perhaps I can provide it to Marine Energy Wales and they could circulate it to anyone that's interested. So that would set out some of our key requirements, and then also on our NRW web pages, we have a section for marine guidance more generally for marine developments. So there isn't anything this bit of guidance isn't on there yet, as I mentioned, but there are other related bits of guidance that you may find useful as well in considering that. So perhaps the best thing for me to do is, as I said, provide that to Minority Wales, and then that can be circulated out to anyone that's interested.
Do you have an idea of the timescales of when that will be available, Kerry?
It's already available, so
it's available, yeah.
it's been completed. It's just in a queue to get online.
Okay, yeah, we'll be uploading some materials following on from this webinar, including recording. So it'd be good to have a link to that. We can put everything in one place for everybody that wants to access the post-event information.
Sure, no problem.
So we've got another anonymous question coming in. So expenditure for a Tidal Lagoon, 750k, won't buy much data. Funding one research project, i.e. fish mortality, that will apply to all projects be considered. Yeah, so asking, would you consider funding one very large, one big project?
The Welsh Government's really keen to see more than one project funded through this process. As part of our aims and objectives, it's not just about supporting the research that is really important, but it is also about that skill set, embedding that knowledge. So the position at the moment is that we would want to fund at least 3 projects through this programme. As I've said, we're really open to match funding, so making our money go further where that is appropriate, but I think it's pretty unlikely, although I will obviously take the comments that we've received today into consideration, that we'll be funding a single project.
So up next, we've got a question from Andy Schofield, just highlighting that a PhD study may take up to 4 years. So will the funding be payable to universities upfront? So I guess it would be good to get some information about how the payments will come out, not just for PhD students, but for any kind of expenditure that a project will likely be undertaking.
Absolutely. So for general projects, I think we'll be looking to pay quarterly in arrears. We intend to make a slightly different application pathway for PhDs, taking into account that those will take longer. So in general, we're looking at most of the money being spent over 2 years, but for PhDs, recognising that needs to be a 4-year timeline, and actually that we might want to be looking for slightly different things in the PhD research space, and that is something that we are going to discuss further with the sector, and if anyone on the call has a particular interest in PhD funding and would like to get in touch, I'd be really delighted to hear from you, because that's something we're looking at the moment and we want to make sure we get right, so we're bringing that new talent through with that sort of research experience around tidal technologies.
Andy, do you want to come back with anything there?
Hi. No, that's great. Thanks, SJ. That was a perfect answer. I was just conscious of the fact, if the money wasn't able to be spent beyond the 2nd year, that might pose a problem for the universities. But what you suggested works really well. Okay, thank you.
A couple more anonymous questions coming in. So, are non-Welsh universities eligible to lead a project, or does it have to be a Welsh university?
Non-Welsh universities will be eligible. They'll just need to be demonstrating the benefit to Wales of what they're proposing. So that's the key piece for it. And I think from our point of view, as I said earlier, if we're looking at a particular site or particular environmental impacts, we want those to be those that are relevant to Welsh waters. But in terms of the institutions themselves, non-Welsh universities would be eligible.
Great. So another anonymous question, will you share shortlisted applications after stage 1 so industry can seek to support any relevant proposals they might not have been aware of at stage 1?
I think that's a really great suggestion. So that's something that I will take away. It wasn't something we were considering doing, but I think as long as we can make that work within the sort of grant framework that we're bound by, I'd be really keen, because I think that sounds very sensible.
And then we've got a question from Tim Carter. Fieldwork should focus on key consenting risk. Worth discussion with NRW to identify what they see as the key risks.
And I think Jay Kerry's response and the document that she suggested, which will be shared with everyone, will hopefully address some of that issue in developing the research priorities. We've been very mindful of what NRW, as well as stakeholders in the Welsh Government's marine licensing and planning, see as key issues. Also, of course, worth flagging that for some of the larger lagoons, NRW might not necessarily be the most relevant body on some of the consenting issues. So bearing that in mind, as well as we look at what research we might fund.
Tim, have you got anything further you want to add to that?
No, I think that covers it. Yeah, be interested to see the document that Kerry mentioned. But yeah, I just think that should be the priority, because I think that's the key risk in terms of getting a project to go forward.
Yep, thank you. I'll make sure it's circulated as soon as we have it in hand from NRW. Oh, Kerry, you want to come back with an additional point there?
Thank you. Yeah, just to mention that we do also have evidence priorities in relation to this subject area, which have previously been identified. And so, they are available on our website as well. So quite different to the guidance around consenting risk, which I believe is a question. But we do have put together a list of our sort of evidence needs with regards to sort of tidal range. If anyone had a particular interest in that, they can access it via our website. Although it is in amongst marine and coastal evidence priorities across a whole range of sectors and fields. So, we may put that together in a more sort of concise document, but it's there in case anyone has an interest in understanding that further.
And if you want to include that with the other information that you send my way, Kerry, I can make sure that all the relevant information from NRW is all sent out together.
Yeah, thank you. Will do.
Cool. Thank you. So we've got another anonymous question, this one perhaps a little bit spicy, asking if this is a good use of taxpayer money. Millions of pounds were spent on research into tidal energy already, yet barrier to development was government support, cost and environmental impact assessments.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly from the Welsh Government's point of view, we really want to support the sector. We are aware, that can only be done with UK government support as well. But what we're really keen to do, as I said, through the Tidal Lagoon Challenge, is to, build that knowledge base, make sure that we're looking at the barriers preventing tidal lagoon development, but also begin to really strengthen the business case about the benefits of tidal lagoon development, make sure we've got real, quantifiable information, gathered through this process about all of the things that are talked about around potential coastal defences, about things like the use of tidal lagoons in the space of artificial reefs. And I think from our point of view, really the piece around raising the profile of the sector in Wales, the Welsh Government is committed to both tidal range and tidal stream technology. We think they're a really important part of the journey to net zero. But that's something that we need the UK government to move on, particularly in the tidal range space, given the capital costs. I absolutely think that it represents value for money to continue to support research. And I think research is never a waste of money, but particularly in this space where we're really keen to see more done. And I think that question probably links also to the question from Gareth in terms of our priorities. I think really for us, we want to strengthen that evidence base and that research community, and that's why the Tidal Lagoon Challenge has been structured as I suggest.
Do you have anything you want to come back with on that, Gareth? No, I'll take that as a no. In which case we've got another anonymous question. Is this a 2-year funding window? And also, when do you expect awards to start?
Yeah, so we'll be making, so the money will be for up to 2 years, depending on the length of the project. So we'll fund for a project for up to 2 years. As you can tell from some of my questions today, asking about how long you might all need to put together applications, we are still developing the timelines, and those will be published as part of the call for applications. But it is our ambition for awards to start in April 2024. So a year from now at the latest. It would be great if we could have anything starting sooner, but obviously, that's still in flux, and we want to make sure that we take the time to award to the right projects, and that we give you all the time to bring forward those high quality research projects.
Got a question from Johan asking if we'll be sharing the presentation and recording. Yep, so we'll aim to have everything up on the Marine Energy Wales website shortly after this webinar. So hopefully this week. I don't want to tie my hands too much on that, but yeah, hopefully we'll have it up later this week. So William Mansfield has asked, would offers of match funding influence the outcome of any award?
So it isn't the intention at the moment that they would. That's something, you know, we're still working through this, as I've said. But I think from our point of view, we want to make sure that where there's research quality, where there's a clear fit with what we're trying to achieve through the scheme, and where there's clear benefit for Wales, that's rewarded, regardless of whether or not that match funding is there. But that is something we will circle back on, given some of the conversation today about match funding.
And William, would you like to come in with anything in response to that?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we've had another anonymous. So there might be issues with confidentiality and competitive nature of the projects to share them after stage 1. So I guess that's a comment in response to the question we had earlier. So we've got another question from Henry Dixon. So given Welsh Government's original ambition and scope for the Tidal Lagoon Challenge, do you think there might be a Tidal Lagoon Challenge 2?
Certainly that conversation is sort of ongoing in parallel with this one. I think probably it is too early to say that Tidal Lagoon Challenge 1 has been a success, and I think that's part of what will be considered when we look to do any further work. But I think it's certainly possible, and it's absolutely the case that while the Tidal Lagoon Challenge is an important part of what Welsh Government is doing around tidal range, it absolutely isn't the intention that it is all of it, and we continue to look as the Marine Energy Programme for how we can support the sector.
Okay, so we seem to be coming towards the end of the questions now. We've got a few more we'll just try and get through. I mean, this webinar's been scheduled up until 4 o'clock, but if we do go through all the questions, we will draw the session to a close. So yeah, if you've got any other burning questions, please feel free to get them in. But yeah, we'll go through what we've got in the system now, and if there's no more, then we'll look to kind of wrap up the session. So a few more anonymous ones here. What information data does NRW require to make a decision on a Marine Alliance fence?
I think Kerry responded to that within the Q&A, okay. So I think that's been addressed.
That's great. Cool. That would be why it's a non-upvoted one then, I think. Yeah, cool. So accessibility for care and maintenance of turbines. I think that's a suggestion for a research area, perhaps. We can close off that one. It looks like there's a decarbonisation item mixed in with an item on construction in different geologies. Can this be corrected?
Yeah, again, that looks like feedback on the research priorities, and we'll be collecting up everything today, so certainly happy to.
So Gareth has said, it is my belief that developers need to be sought because without them, no funding or building will take place. So I guess we've had similar feedback already today, that perhaps there's value in some sort of networking or matchmaking element to facilitate greater collaboration between industry and academia. And yeah, as touched upon earlier, we'll take that away in our sort of regular discussions that we have between Marine Energy Wales and local partnerships, and try and figure out what we think the best way forward would be there. So I think that concludes all of the questions. I'll just kind of waffle for a moment or two just to see if anybody wants to come in. Equally, feel free to raise your hand if you have any sort of final thoughts or comments that you'd like to share before we look to wrap up this session.
I think just to say, if he hasn't already, my colleague Adam will be putting an email address in the chat, which is how you can reach the Tidal Lagoon Challenge team. There we go. It is in Welsh there, and I think we've got a English version of the email address too, which will drop in. So yeah, really do welcome further feedback, and this has been a really helpful session for us, but I don't want anyone to feel that this is it. Like, we are listening and we want to make sure that this is the best it can be for Wales, and we can only do that with all of your thoughts and support. Which, sorry, was that me, Jay, jumping into my next steps far too quickly?
That's fine. Yeah, go at whatever pace you like. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so good. So I think just to bring us to a close, we are looking to launch the challenge in the next 6 months. We'll obviously make sure that MEW contacts all of you at that point, although I would hope that we will make enough of a splash that you would hear about it otherwise. And as I've said, there'll be a 2-stage application process, and we are currently looking to award in spring 2024, but all of the timelines will be published when the challenge is launched, which will hopefully be very soon. All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you
everyone,
everybody
your time today.
thank you for joining us today. Thank you for participating. Yeah, all of the feedback will be very useful for determining the next steps for the Lagoon Challenge. So this stakeholder engagement is really important for making sure that it is reflects the needs of the industry. As we've touched upon a few times already, we will be putting some information up on our website once we've kind of compiled everything. We'll have the webinar recording. A colleague of mine should be producing a briefing note summarising this meeting as well. And we should hopefully have some resources shared from NRW as well. So we'll circulate an email when all that's ready, as we've got all your emails, everybody that's attended. And yeah, thank you again, and watch this space for the next steps.
Cheers,
Cheers, everyone. Have a good afternoon.